Here's a man that cares about our jobs. He cares about our future. And right here from the Paragon Foundation, help me welcome Mr. G.B. Oliver.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I thought I got up here by accident. I came up here. I know what a cow feels like when you load her on a chute, Smiley. I kept trying to get back off the backside, and I never was able to do it. Ladies and gentlemen, what an honor and a privilege to be here with you on such an important occasion. I maybe look at this a little bit differently, and I want to ask you a question. In the Paragon Foundation, we spend a great deal of time looking at the founding documents of this country. Tell me where in those founding documents you find where the federal government has any authority or any jurisdiction to imply any of these things on any of the citizens within a sovereign state. Have any of you ever read that? We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men were created equal. There's nothing about lizards there, is there? And endowed by their creator, as you heard in the prayer, with inalienable rights. And the governments were instituted among men for the protection of those rights. They didn't give them to us. As you heard in the prayer a while ago, those rights were granted by God. And so, I ask you, have we in this country forgot that we are the heirs and the descendants of a great revolution? That we were handed freedom secured by blood of 1,000 men, that those men that created this country, just as Congressman Pierce, who every time he strapped on an airplane, pledged to each other their lives, their fortunes, their sacred honor. That's the way this country got started. And for what, ladies and gentlemen? For what? So you and I can go down and comment to an agency that's already made a decision? Is that what those men suffered and died for? So that we can stand up or kneel down at the altar of a nameless, faceless, unelected bureaucrat who believe they have the authority and jurisdiction to issue edicts down on us like summary orders from some distant God? How did we get in this position? Have we forgot what the Constitution says, or do we not believe it anymore? That's a question I have. You see anything in that Constitution that would allow that? I look at Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, and it lists all the enumerated powers of the federal government. All of them. Beg your pardon?
It says promote the common welfare in the preamble to the Constitution.
Let me ask you something, sir. Article 1, Section 8 lists all the enumerated powers of the federal government.
That's right.
Do you see anything in there about the endangered species list?
I'm asking for clarity.
You-
Everybody does whatever they feel.
You and I can visit about this right after this is over with. I would encourage that, partner. The other thing that I would like to call to your attention, ladies and gentlemen, is the Endangered Species Act itself. It falls under Title 16 in the United States Code. Look it up sometime. Title 16 was never enacted into positive law. What does that mean to you? It means that that title in law has no authority or jurisdiction within the boundaries of a state. So how did they get here? Back in the 1970s, ladies and gentlemen, they co-opted this state into ceding that jurisdiction to them. But all is not lost, and I commend Ronnie Reardon and my county commissioner and Lewin Derrick and those people that have stepped up, because you have to remember that in New Mexico, these are home rule counties. Those are the only elected officials in the country that put their hand on a Bible and swear an oath to protect the safety, the well-being, and the property of the citizens in their county. The only ones that do that. And I'll share something else with you that is their Achilles heel if you and I will wake up and look at what's real and what's not. The federal government has no police powers within the state.
That's right.
Now that ought to blow your mind, huh? So you tell me, ladies and gentlemen, how do they enforce a statute without law enforcement authority? And for those of you that are unaware of that, do not take my word for that. I ask you to go home and get on your computers and get on the United States Supreme Court website. And I want you to look up U.S. versus DeWitt, Wilkerson versus Raniere, U.S. versus Fox, Thurlow versus Massachusetts, Patterson versus Kentucky. Again and again and again, the United States Supreme Court has reiterated the fact that all police powers reside in the state. So how did they get behind you? They go and co-opt your sheriff. And I got to tell you, I'm so proud of the sheriff that we just elected in Otero County, because you know what? He has refused to sign a memorandum of understanding with any of the law enforcement people out there. tell you right now, if your sheriff hasn't done that, you get on his behind and get that done. I thought it was one of the great forms of entertainment I have, because he calls me and tells me when he refused to sign the document, and all they sent him was the last page where his signature goes. They never sent him the rest of the MOU. So he calls him on the phone and he says, "Hey, I didn't get the rest of the document." And the federal marshal's response to that was, "We'll have trouble with you, buddy." And you know what? When he didn't jump sideways, they sent 3 guys down the other day to spend 6 hours with him. This time they had a little different attitude. They said, "How many squad cars is it going to take to get this deal done? How many squad cars?" You see, that's how you have co-opted those inalienable rights you've been given. That's the way they got there. They got there by providing your police squad cars and DWI stop money. That's how they got there. If there's anything we have in this country, ladies and gentlemen, that we have in spades, it is a history of what it takes to achieve liberty and get there. I just believe that this country is rich in that kind of history. And I think back about the price that's been paid, and how did you and I get here when there's no authority, no moral authority, and no constitutional authority for them to be here. And I can tell you right now that, in my opinion, you have to go back and look at those champions of freedom. And one of them, and John, you heard me say this the other day, I go back and I look at Winston Churchill. There is a man that, when the end of England looked imminent, it looked like it was all over, he went before the people. And this is the kind of courage that you've got to find within your hearts and your soul. He said, "We will never, ever give up. We will fight on the landings, we'll fight on the beaches, we'll fight in the fields and on the streets and on the hills. We will never surrender. We will defend this island regardless of the cost. So that if the British Empire and its Commonwealth shall last 1,000 years, men will say, this was our finest hour." Ladies and gentlemen, this is about choices, and obviously you've come here and you've made one. But it's about bringing your friends and neighbors into this show. If you and I should stand on the sidelines with our hands in our pockets while our birthright of our children and our grandchildren is ripped away, and that is exactly what this is. This has nothing to do with protecting anything. It's about destroying our natural resources and taking away our rights. And if you and I stand on the sideline, what happens? While that happens, the rocks, the trees, the very tarmac that you sit on here this afternoon should cry out in judgment against you. The one thing that I know with absolute certainty is that within our mortal hands, we have the power to control our own destiny. And you've got to believe that as well. Go back and read that document. Give up dancing with the stars for a little while and read the thing that provides you all of your rights. But what remains to be seen is you and I, as a country, do we have the courage that it takes to be free? And as I look across this crowd and look into your eyes, it's such an honor for me to be here. So many of you have been longtime heroes of mine. And I got to tell you that I believe in my heart, down to my very soul, that someday you and I will look back at this time in this place, and we'll be able to look down deep within our heart and say to ourselves that this too was our finest hour. God bless you all.